Well, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone online. Thanks for showing up. Before I get started, I'll just a little bit about me. So Francois is my first name, Freed last name. I'm currently in the field. I work as a cybersecurity analyst for a company called Crowley. They're local, based in Jacksonville. I've been with them for 3 years. My main duties there are to run our vulnerability management program and then coordinate penetration tests for internal pen tests. So those are the two main areas that I'm responsible for, on top of everything that, a cybersecurity role comes with, which usually goes beyond your day-to-day roles and assignments. You might have tickets, handling incidents and all of that. But so I've been in the field for a little bit. That's me. So I'll get into the presentation for today. So this will be just mostly about recon and really the purpose of how recon can benefit your organization on a more internal aspect. Instead of looking at the attack side, we'll look at kind of the defense side. So how can it benefit the organization to defend it? So kind of taking a little bit of a twist of your typical, attacking, but we'll just go, let me make sure my mouse works. Yep. So that's pretty much what I'll cover. So if you don't know what reconnaissance is, we'll talk about that, the types of reconnaissance tools, why perform it internally, just kind of like the defensive workflow for recon. We'll go over one case study. I have three little demos, and then just summarize and best practices on everything we discussed. If you have any questions throughout it, just feel free to interrupt. This is meant to not be a lecture, but obviously I would like to have an exchange. If you don't have any questions, that's fine as well. But yeah, just interrupt at any time, online or in person. Okay. So what is reconnaissance? So the whole goal of reconnaissance is just gathering information about ideally a specific target. And it is considered the first part of the cyber kill chain. So the cyber kill chain was invented by it was military based, which I know some of you are like, I think from ex-military, so you may have an understanding of it, but I think it was Lockheed Martin, if I that or Lockheed yeah, okay. So they actually built the structure and the format for the cyber kill chain, which comes down to those are the phases of a cyber attack. What are the different phases? And my next slide will go into that some, so you'll be able to see like those steps if you're not familiar with it. But really, what you're trying to do for on the cybersecurity side, a tech side, is identifying the different systems that are in that environment, the networks, the users, pretty much any possible points of entry to then hopefully exploit that environment. So it's really like that first step, which is very critical when you're looking at different aspects. So this is pretty much the overview of the cyber kill chain. It starts with reconnaissance, which really is the first step. That's what we'll be talking about mostly for today. Then you're going into weaponization, delivery, exploit, installation, C2, and then actions and objectives. That covers the whole chain, but we're just talking about phase one. So obviously there's a lot more to discover within even phase one, and then within the phase that follow. But if you're interested in it, if you put cyber kill chain online, you'll be able to pull that up pretty quickly. It usually is the first or second link you'll find it. So, but okay, so types of recon. So there's two main ones. I added two additional ones, and I'll talk about why. But the main two types are passive reconnaissance and active reconnaissance. So when you're looking at passive, you're really just collecting information without interacting with that target. And what that means is it's publicly available information. So you're not actually trying to, run a scan, do some probing, just additional kind of uh, looking at that network besides what's available on like online, which that could be just looking on Google, looking on social media, it could be just looking on public databases. It's just whatever's available to you without really kind of what you could call starting to attack that environment. And then there's the active side, which with the active, I definitely want to point that if you play around with active reconnaissance, you could go into illegal territory, depending on what you're doing. So this is to be mindful that active reconnaissance starts about really looking at the network. That's running scans and map scans with this. It could be other types of scans, but it's really like now you have a specific target and you're starting to run scans against it to discover more information. Depending on where you're scanning, this could be illegal activity. So you just have to be mindful of what you're scanning, make sure you have authorization. There is test environments, which we will do some active and passive reconnaissance in the demos that I'll show later. The active one will be based on environments that you're allowed to do testing on. But I'll reiterate that probably when the time comes. So these are the two main things, passive and active when it types recon. For this scenario, because I wanted to talk about kind of the defending side and how you can benefit recon on the defending side, I added those two other types. So there's going to be the attack side. So we're talking about you're a hacker, you're trying to get into a system. So when you're starting reconnaissance, it's really to identify anything that's exposed in that environment. What can you see and what can you potentially take advantage of? So that's kind of like the mindset they're going to have. And then while they're doing this, they're going to collect that information. They're going to, start mapping all these assets and like what vulnerabilities are tied to those assets, just getting the full picture. And they're ideally, kind of staying quiet. Even if they're doing active reconnaissance, they're going to try to do something that's less noticeable, less aggressive, just to collect some of that information. And then ideally, nobody knows. Nobody knows that they're collecting all of that information. They're still quiet. There's no noise. There's no secure alerts being triggered by all of that. And now you're kind of building that portfolio of like, this is the company I want to attack. This is all the areas that are potential entry points. And then when you're looking at the defending side, so it could be considered the attack side. So let's say like you're hiring a pen test firm, you could label that as defending because at that point you're being preventive, you're hiring somebody to attack your organization, and you could use that like you're really defending your organization. You're having somebody attack you so you can better defend you. So it kind of can kind of tie into that. But as far as like just what I want to cover, the whole point is for that is you want to see what those attackers are seeing because if you don't know what they're seeing, then you don't know what they're going to exploit. So if you can kind of do reconnaissance on your own environment, you're going to be able to see, okay, they're seeing this. What are those vulnerabilities? What do I need to fix? So that's kind of like what ties into that second point is like patch and reduce exposure. So now that you're seeing what they're seeing, is there anything critical? Is there anything that can be exploited? If there is, let's go ahead and patch it. So now it's an entry point that you remove from them. So that's kind of like the defending, and just wanted to highlight those because I think the logic when you're approaching defensive reconnaissance and like offensive reconnaissance, it's a little different. Okay, I'll go into next one. So just different reconnaissance tools. So when we're talking about, and there's way more than what's listed. These are just a few ones. So for passive, you're going to have Maltego, ReconNG, Shodan, the OSINT framework, which highlights a lot of different tools there. And then today we'll go over some Shodan, and then active. So that would be Nmap, Nessus, Nikto, which these are all Nessus and Nikto are vulnerability assessment tools. So if you're trying to check against vulnerability with Nmap, you can kind of do that, but it's not the same. Nmap is more of a network scan. So just checking the open ports and all of that. And then it may give you some information on like the vulnerabilities, but not the vulnerability themselves. Just like, you'll see that port 80 is open or, some like unsecure port. So that's kind of like you're getting some vulnerability information, but you would have to be able to put the points together. So that's where Nessus and Nikto. And for today, I'll do a Nmap, a little bit of a Nmap demo and a Nikto demo. Just because Nikto is open source, so anybody can use it. Nmap, anybody can use it. Shodan as well, which a lot of the reconnaissance tools that you can use are open source. You can use them. Nessus, there's a free license, but for the most part, the full suite is organization. You have to pay for it. And then with recon, kind of you talk about passive and active, but a lot of reconnaissance within an organization can be done with monitoring systems. Like your SIM, when you're getting all those logs, you can see the traffic, you can see what's going on in your environment. So these are as well very beneficial for reconnaissance. Intrusion detection systems, which is IDS, network traffic analyzer, threat intelligence feeds. So threat intelligence feeds can be a lot of things. It could be blog articles. So that's public available information, or it could be just things that you build within your organization. Some have a threat intel program. They'll be looking at the dark web, doing investigations there, looking at Telegram, doing all of that. So you're getting additional information from there. So that's again reconnaissance. Like, is there, for example, Telegram? Are they chatting about my organization? Like, because some organizations have teams that specifically do that, or they hire organizations to do that. So like now you're seeing, oh man, they're talking about us. They're seeing like there's this that's vulnerable. Let's close it up before they start exploiting it. So that's the tools for the most part. And then next slide. So I think I touched a lot of the reasons why in a way, but so like why perform a reconnaissance internally. So really it's to understand your attack surface. At the most part, what are they seeing? You know, if you don't know it, then they probably do, and then it might put you in some hot water. But the ideally too for you kind of want to quantify your security posture, understand like what it looks like, what is the impact, what's the risk, what does that whole landscape look like? Because if you know what you can see from externally, then you're going to have a better understanding of what would be considered higher risk for your environment. So, and then obviously you can look at it like measure it over time. So you get your baseline reconnaissance, do your patching, and then over time you can kind of figure out like, are we keep adding new holes because we're introducing new application in our environment? Are we not? And we're doing pretty good now because as we're introducing new application, we're doing reconnaissance as part of that step. And then automatically now you're closing those gaps and doing a better job. And then obviously patching, like that's the big thing is prioritizing, like knowing that's what they see. So that's what I should ideally patch first, if possible. And then you can patch the extras, but ideally, you know, what they see is probably what you want to patch first to help minimize their entry points. Okay, so that kind of ties into like the defensive recon workflow. So this is specifically for the organization level, not the attacker level, but you're going to really look at all your assets. The first thing is discovering all your assets, understanding all those assets, and then you'll run a vulnerability scan on it. So usually that's where Nessus comes in. And then you'll know all those vulnerabilities for all these different assets, and then look at, okay, all those vulnerabilities, which ones are higher risk, which ones can, you know, expose you to different things. And then exposure analysis ties into it as well, which you'll have the vulnerability data that you can use to figure out where you're exposed, but that's where you want to do some additional digging to see like, okay, what's publicly facing. And those are going to be applications or environments you're going to want to probably tighten up, and then remediation, because obviously if you discover all this and you don't patch it, don't fix it, then what's the point? But obviously, step one is understanding. So if you can't patch it for whatever reason, at least you're aware of it, and hopefully maybe you can put some compensating controls, minimize the risk. So that's always an option. But I definitely say that, in my opinion, asset discovery is huge because if you're not scanning, you don't know that environment, then you don't know what your attack surface is. So that's where, in my opinion, like really knowing all of the assets that your environment is is pretty crucial. Okay, so that now we'll kind of tie into like a case study. So this is an old one. It's a pretty big one, but I figured it'd be an easy one to go over. So Capital One, there was a cloud breach back in 2019. So all it was is there was a misconfigured cloud firewall that let attackers just access the AWS environment for Capital One. That could have been detected just based on doing a reconnaissance on the AWS, you know, cloud instance, which was public facing, and then figure out, run basic scans, look at what's misconfigured on it, and then fix it. So just reconnaissance could have addressed this. What they did pretty much is the attackers use SSRF to like obtain the credentials and then just pretty much access the data that was in that S3 bucket. So what happened from this is 100 million plus customers got their information leaked. Social security numbers were taken, credit card information, all of that, just from one server, one server that was misconfigured.
My info was a part of that.
Okay.
Yeah, but, there was a litigation against Capital One, and basically they had like a thing where they locked my social and
Yeah.
it's still locked right now. I go pull it every now and then, but I locked it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of devastating, especially for the customers and the
Yeah.
people, you know, it's, you don't want to have to, you know, now your social security number is out there and then like they're going through the pain of it and hopefully they didn't get to, you know, utilize it and then just take advantage of it. So it's cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so kind of core lessons from just this is obviously if they perform, you know, internal reconnaissance, they would have probably caught the misconfiguration. So it's definitely something simple, but And those are require obviously it requires manpower to be able to perform reconnaissance, but it's not like something that you need to pay for crazy tools. A lot of it's again open source, publicly available. So even if you want to start that within your organization, it's not like you have to say like, hey, I need budget for this. I need, $50,000 to buy these tools. No, you don't need any tools that you need to pay for. Obviously, the only thing they need to prove is time spent on there. They might have other priorities, so that's the difference between being able to do it or not do it. Um, but okay, so I'll go into demos. So we'll cover those three, network mapping, OSINT and exposure, and then vulnerability verification. I'm gonna exit out of the slide and then I'll hop into my VM and then I'll be able to start showing you some basic stuff. Let me bring my mouse. Okay. Sure it's yep, pulling up. Cool. Okay. So if you're curious, this is ParrotOS. It's like Kali Linux, but I tend to prefer ParrotOS, but those are my two favorite, Kali and Parrot. So if you're interested, this is kind of that same realm. It's an operating system with a bunch of pre-installed tools. So if you're curious of what I'm using, that's what it is. So for the most part, I'll pretty much be running, and there's a lot of ways you can start it up, but it comes built in. So I'll be running Nmap. So it comes in, and so Nmap is really neat, and that comes into okay. So again, what I'm doing right here is in a test environment that is approved, which is going to be the Nmap environment, the scanme.nmap.org. If you're scanning certain assets that aren't yours and you don't have authorization, depending on the type of Nmap scan, it could be considered, you know, crossing the boundaries of what's ethical and legal. So just be mindful of if you do this, I highly recommend just do it on your own environment when you're home connected to your network, just and map it. Yep.
Since you just said ROS.
Yeah, Kali, Linux. Yep. Yeah, Kali. So these are yeah, no, California, yeah. But no, Cali, yeah, K. And yeah, th those are my two favorite personally. There's a lot. I do run Ubuntu as well on the another, but these come with pre-installed tools, which is nice. Ubuntu, I use it just to run an AI server at home. But that's a good Linux environment. You can then start building it out. Some people do that. They kind of like something bare bone, and then they'll add the tools if you want something. But I've always liked personally Parrot OS, which is the main one I use, and I play with Kali. Yeah,
Is there an advantage to Parrot over Jolly?
preference. That's all it is. Yeah, there isn't. I mean, you may if you go into like the details of which one, you may find some preferences for yourself. I don't really have a preference besides just the fact that it feels better to me. But it's Cali's great too. Like, so I'm not like saying this is way better or anything. Like, if you give me both, I'll be very happy with either or. So
But before you start your scanning,
yeah.
Do you normally use a VPN to stay under the radar?
So if you're so like you're talking about like kind of like the attacking side. And like if you're trying to stay like undetected. So a lot of times yeah, you could use a VPN. A lot of times it's mostly proxy chaining. So you're going to be hopping through different hops like through a proxy. So that doesn't have to, it could be a VPN. And then just so they don't know what your actual true source IP is, because once they see the scan, they're probably going to block it. So you're going to want to rotate to another one. But yes, you could technically pretty much take advantage of that. So that would be one way. But for this, I'm not like and a lot of times you run it from a VM too. So like this is not showing my true IP either, just from my VM because I can change it. But then you'll usually like route the traffic through multiple proxies. So it doesn't even show the actual source IP of your VM. Yeah. So ideally, yeah, like a lot of the things that you would do is probably you run it from a VM from your host and then running it through multiple proxies. So
Yeah.
if you want to stay as hidden as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 But um, so okay, so pretty much I will pretty much run this. So you can do Nmap, and you can use pretty much the basic ones. There's a lot of ways you can do it. So obviously you can run a URL, or you can run an IP, a specific IP, or a complete subnet. You have multiple options. You can look at specific ports. There's a lot you can do with Nmap, but I'll kind of show you guys a basic. This is kind of looking at, and this will be the scan me Nmap. Oh, if I can type app.org. So this is looking at just like open ports, operating system. It's going to be looking at the versions. It's pretty detail or like enough information to get you started. So if I run this, that's going to start it. It's going to do its thing. Again, scanme.nmap.org is a play environment, so you can like mess around with it. I do believe they have like some limitations of to what extent of the scans you can do. Like I think there's a few ones that are like more intense that may like just impact the environment. So I believe there's a few little ones, but like for example, the one I ran, the one they list, um, those are not a problem. Here, I'll kind of make this a little bit bigger. But okay, so just from this Nmap scan. So now I ran against this target, and I could pick another target, another like publicly facing domain or a URL that's internal. So you can use external or internal IPs with this, but this is technically an external IP, which we're really looking at like, attacking, because if you're attacking, you probably don't know yet. Yeah.
So, I noticed you're using the command prompt or the terminal,
Yep.
but is it better to use the software?
So ZenMap, and is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then now.
So there's a GUI version of Nmap, so a graphical user interface that is more user friendly. And so that's ZenMap for the most part. There is Nmap has like, and that's it's in here just because we're talking about it. It doesn't come pre-installed with ZenMap, but ParrotOS, but there is this one which is this. So this is pretty much Nmap with a user interface. So here you put the host, and then you can put obviously like the commands that you need, and then you run it, and then you'll have a little bit more information. I can actually run both just to show you the difference. Personal preference. Sometimes, so this one I'm not a huge fan of, like the Nmap, like C4 or whatever. Like I don't really use it. ZenMap is pretty good. I like it. I think it's nice. It's a little bit more digestible of information sometimes to do, but Nmap is good too. It's the raw data, so that's where it's like you're really getting the true output. But if ZenMap, play with that, I do recommend if you're gonna play with Nmap, play with ZenMap as well. It's just running pretty much Nmap in the background, but giving you like kind of, it does like a network topology too. So like if there's multiple assets on the subnet, it will kind of link them and see like the connections and all that. So there's some useful stuff, and makes it a little bit easier, I think, sometimes to.
Wireshark today.
So you can run, yeah, Wireshark. That would be, I didn't include it in this scenario, but yeah, Wireshark but for the most part, Wireshark is going to be, obviously you're going to want to look at live traffic, which you could, and some people you would consider that pretty much Wireshark recon. So like that would fall under like reconnaissance, because you're just inspecting the packets and then seeing like, the traffic flow and all of that. It might cause some flags. Obviously, it just depends on what you're doing. But yeah, Wireshark is definitely a big tool as well. That's open source. But okay, so I'll kind of go back to, I'll just move this and then put this. So that's the Nmap results. So from here, I can tell port 22 is open, port 80 is open, port 9929 is open, and then this 31,337, so it just kind of tells you, okay, what's open. So obviously, like, port 80 is unencrypted port. So maybe that's something you can take advantage of. It tells you what the server's running. So it's like Apache 247. So you could technically now, okay, you start gathering that information. Now you get your first parts that, okay, port 80 is open, that's an unsecure port. So maybe I can leverage that. Maybe there's something I can do. Port 22, obviously that is a secure port, but maybe that can get you access into a server. If you SSH, you'll definitely need more information, probably some credentials. But maybe there's something you can leverage there. So it's like knowing now what's open. Obviously, the rest is closed, but now you see what can I do with this? This is not vulnerability data, but it's potential gaps that you can start exploiting. You have to do some further analysis to see, but then that's where like the versions can get very interesting. So now you can look at, okay, is Apache HTTPD 2.4.7 vulnerable? Is there any known vulnerabilities out there? You can grab that information and then start looking at what's publicly available. There's maybe a CVE on it that's going to tell you the steps that you can maybe take advantage and exploit that because that's on port 80. So now you're using an unencrypted port, and then maybe you have a vulnerable server that is running. So, and then you start leveraging. Yep.
So Temple tracks is all that stuff, like if there's ever like an investigation that they're searching for all that stuff, that same information that they're using gathered from the open web will be used against them or because of a look. So
Yeah. So like if like there's a cyber incident and then like you're found kind of guilty of negligence type of thing, and then like there's a court case. So yeah, I mean it's possible they'll use anything, but they'll have to be able to prove that at that time that vulnerability was existent too. So, it's not like, oh, that's the vulnerabilities that are current. Maybe they could help like build a case. I can't fully speak on that because it's not like I'm involved in court cases. But yes, theoretically, like, if they're really trying to attack you, they're probably going to look at some of that stuff. At least that I would assume because a lot of it's like they're going to look at what your environment looked at the time and were you guys not following regulations or certain things like especially like we're talking about Capital One, they have certain requirements like they have to follow PCI and protect that user information. So like if they're not, they're going to get slapped with major fees and fines and stuff like that. So that's where definitely could be used against them depending on what's discoverable, and if they can track it that it was that way at the time. But yeah, so that's pretty much Nmap on a basic level. You could, again, run it however you want, but I definitely recommend just play around. There's a lot of different commands. You can go specific, you can go intense scans, and I'll kind of show you guys maybe with here. I'll run maybe the exact same scan just to show a real comparison. Scan me.
And then we can scan IP addresses to find out, track the user listening, what's linked on there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can, yeah, Nmap is a great tool. And then, yeah, and then here, like, for example, there's a drop down, you can like use like quick scan and 10 scan. Like there's already like some predefined templates that you can use. So that's always a good starting point as well, just to, play around, see, and then it'll tell you like what the actual commands so that you can learn them. But I will run this. So now it's pretty much the same thing because it automatically acknowledges that this is going to be running Nmap, so I don't have to like list it. So now my scan's here. So if I click on it, let's see, like it's a little bit more friendly. So now it's port 22. It's the same findings, same stuff, but it's just, maybe easier for you to read in here than it is in here. This is one asset. So again, if there's multiple assets, that's where it would give you more of a relationship. But see here, you can see the full scan output, which might be a little small, but yeah, so kind of the same stuff you're seeing. And there's additional information sometimes that comes up. So the lookup, what did it hit? So that was like the IPv4 and the IPv6 address of that URL. So it gives you like some additional information as well. But some pretty much like additional information that may be useful. It's, in my opinion, definitely useful when you're looking at bigger like subnets, multiple targets. If it's a single target, then maybe less. But yeah, definitely yeah, check those out. But that's pretty much just this demo. I'll jump into the other one, just giving you guys a brief overview. The next one, I will. This is the part iOS never likes to. Uh, Switch to my browser actually for this. And So let me double check that online. No one had any questions. Okay, yeah, no questions. So, um, and okay, so I opened three things that I'll show you guys briefly. So first thing, it's MX Toolbox, which I've covered in the past. So I don't know if you were here for some of those. And then Who is Lookup, which you can actually do from MX Lookup, and then Shodan. So these are going to be the three things I'll briefly go over. This is publicly available information. So now we're talking about passive reconnaissance. This is not active, though you can do whatever you want on here, any target, go for it. So from this is MX Toolbox allows you to really look at DNS records. So it usually by default starts at like the MX records, but you can put any domain you want. And let's, for the sake of it, let's use the same like domain that I had before. And then do I get my charger or okay, but so Nmap. So obviously this is probably not a mail related domain, so there's not anything that's going to be available on here. And I put scam, not scan. So I mean, you guys, yeah. So yeah, that's so this is not going to give you any results, but you can do a lot of different things. So you can do DNS lookups. So this is where you're going to find an IP. So this is what the A records. So this is actually a different IP than what I was showing in Nmap. So that's where I might be curious to look at. I believe it was a different one because I think it was a 30 or something like that. Yeah. So that tells you, okay, that's the public IP of this. It's running through probably, I would assume, like some type of system, maybe a WAF or firewall or something. So you may see things differently, but it gives you like the IP that's associated with this. You can do obviously like a bunch of different things. Like, so you could look at SPF records, DCAM, which that's more mail related. But you could do just look through pretty much all of the different DNS records that help you understand. And you can do this for an IP as well. So obviously if you do a reverse lookup, so if you wanted to look at an IP, like, and for example, I can use, like, I'll just use this one, but like if you didn't know, for example, the URL for it, and you just wanted like, hey, I found this IP, let's see if it's like, maybe there's a public facing site for it or something. You can do a reverse DNS lookup, which that ties to like pretty much nmap.org. So that's that IP, which it goes through Acme. But this is like a basic step of like your a scenario, that environment has a website. Whatever the website is, you're trying to gather information on it. You're trying to figure out the IP, you're trying to see what their DNS records look like, if there's anything in there. You're just gathering information. And then hopefully you can make sense of that information and figure out like, is there anything that you can exploit? But for the most part, ideally, when you're starting that reconnaissance, you're kind of like saying, okay, this URL, this is the IP that's used. Okay, these are potentially the ports that are open. These are, you're kind of like building your little like database of like everything that is about that asset. And then once you have all of that, then you'll start pivoting into like attacking and trying to leverage it. Yeah,
This is perfectly okay to use.
Yeah.
There's no like gray area.
none at all. I use this every day, and not for reconnaissance. I use it for incident investigation. I use it for a lot of things. This is 100%, yeah. Like if you get an attack, like you want to look up like there's a sender address, comes in, sends an email, and it's, joeschmuck.com, like whatever their name is, they're sending. So now you can put that, see the MX record, and I'll like, for example, put up like my own website just to show you. I know what MX lookup. So boom, like this tells you like if you get an email from I don't know, info@francoisfreed.com, then now I did an MX lookup. I know what mail servers they use. So based on that, like you can see I'm using a iCloud mail server. So now what my mail server is. Maybe there's something you exploit there. So that's additional information. But for me, look, if we're talking about incidents, now I want to understand, is this a legit mail server? Is it some like bootleg mail server that usually hackers use that maybe I'll just block the entire mail server. But the one thing I know is if they're hosting on iCloud, if they're hosting on like Gmail or whatever, I don't want to block that. I can't block that because now I'm blocking everything else that comes from that. So like this is like a tool that's super helpful. I use it a lot. And there's other ones like I'm not sponsoring, like use MX Toolbox, I just like it. A lot of people that I know use it, but there's probably other tools out there. And then with this, you can do as well. So that's kind of like there's the Who is Lookup website, which is the official website for Who is Lookup, but you can run it from here as well and can do a Who is Lookup, run that. And then from here, so you can get more information about the target. So now, okay, this is additional information. Okay, so now these are the name servers I'm using. So I'm using Cloudflare. I run my everything's proxied through Cloudflare. So I use a WAF for my website. So and it's run through this. But now I know. Now, just based on this, I'm not doing anything malicious. I'm just looking. I know they're using Cloudflare. Is there how am I going to get through it? Like additional information. And then you can figure out maybe some additional information when it was, registered, when are they renewing? Maybe, okay, it's up for renewal. Maybe they'll switch some SSL search or something. Maybe there's something I can send a phishing email to them that like, hey, it's DigiCert, one of the big like certificate authorities that like it's time for renewal. Maybe they'll fall for that because it's that time for them to renew. Like you can use all of that information to start like thinking like attacker. It's all free game, by using this information, and you can build stories with it. But maybe they're gonna have like some contact information. So everything I use me is redacted. Sometimes maybe they don't. A lot of times they should be redacted, but sometimes they might not be, and you might get some user email, some phone number. You can start using that to leverage that to do an attack. So like for me, everything's redacted. You're not going to see anything. You're going to have to email like if you want, it's Cloudflare only, but everything like it's not like there's anything personal. Obviously, there's certain things you can't redact. So like it's still from Florida. That's where it was registered and all of that. But this is again just additional information that you're gathering to do reconnaissance and figure out what people can see. So now we kind of go into this is DNS records, who is lookup. Now we go into Shodan. Shodan is free for the most part. I believe they have like some additional things you can pay, but you just got to create an account. I'm already logged in for the most part. This one is pretty much kind of a collection, a database of everything that is publicly exposed on the internet. And I'm talking about to the extent of webcams. Like you can find publicly exposed webcams that are on there that now you might be able to see whatever's going on if somebody didn't secure that webcam correctly. So this is like a pretty good tool, free. It, so yeah, sometimes they get tricky, but yeah, right. I'm not sure I'm gonna condone to use that necessarily for this exercise, but let me
That's so good.
yeah. It does so for this what you can do is like you can do let's say you want to look at like any port. It's just so you can do port and then let me see. So it should be can do we'll do basic port for now, but port 80. You just type port 80. That's it. Now it's gonna pull up. Obviously, it's like not filtered and it's giving you a bunch of stuff that isn't relevant, but this is showing you everything online that can be shown with port 80 open. So obviously you can like pick on any one of them. So like we'll say this is public IP, we'll click on it. Now we get more information. So this is a Microsoft server based on what we're seeing. And from here, just from that, like now we know it's a Windows server. This is a random, like I'm not even like, looking at random, but it's called postjobfree.com. So I know postjobfree.com has port 80 and port 443. Obviously, a lot of things are gonna have port 80 and like port 443 open, but you could put any port, figure out like there's some publicly facing server that you would type in a vulnerable port. And then that's most likely unencrypted or something you can exploit and then use that and find a target. So if you're going by random, or if you want to go specific and find like, this is the domain and do I want to see if there's any open ports, you could do it this. So this is not going to trigger any alerts. This is publicly available information. So Nmap, you might get detected by running this. You might trigger an alert. So starting here is always a good baseline too, just to see, does it see anything? Then you can run into, because usually you'll start with passive and then go into active. You don't usually start with active, then go into passive. But you could, there's nothing wrong against it either. Yep.
So is this in real time or is this
Yeah.
updated every?
So well, not like real time. So this is last seen pretty much in the future. So November 18th, which I'm assuming maybe their time zone might be ahead of time. But here this it tells you like pretty much when it was last seen. So it was today. So this is like, and then some of it was tomorrow, but I guess this is probably ahead of time. It might be using, yeah, UTC or something like that. So it's like 2 a.m. But yeah, I mean it's pretty much like pretty up to date like information. So it's definitely accurate. After what they consider like, last seen, like that's them, but I don't, in the background, I don't really know the exact inner workings of how they map everything and all of that. So I don't want to speak on that. So it's possible maybe there's a delay between like when they tell you like last seen is like their database is like you just refresh, but maybe this is like older information. But for the most part, it should be relevant information. Some of it you definitely can leverage. Um, but so that's just random. Just picked one port, found a host. I already know what the servers it's running. I know the ports that are open. So I already have like information about it. I know like just basic stuff. And this is the SSL certificate. Obviously, this is all things you can like do by just going on the website, potentially directly, get all some of that information. There's more stuff you can do just from that. But this is a good like starting point where it feeds you a lot of information in one screen instead of you going here, 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 like try to find all that information individually. That could get you started quicker. And then if you want, if there's things that are interesting, you can go on those targets and double check. Is it valid? Like, because then we can go on the actual website here and let's go see. Like, am I actually seeing that they're running this server? Am I seeing that this is the actual SSL certificate they're running? Maybe they're using some poor encryption key that I can crack, something like that. So that's Shodan. And then let me see, like, and for the example, I could put uh Apache. So just like the servers that we're seeing in Nmap, and now I can see anything that's running the Apache server. I could put the version of Apache. So if I want something, I want to find something exploitable, like I like let's say Apache, I don't know, 123 is exploitable. You just put Apache 123, it's not a real version. But now you can find it and see what's listed and available online as exploitable. And then here, so now I click on this one. This thing's from Republic of Korea. So this just tells me it's actually tied to Hyundai. These are all the open ports to it from that server. So it just tells me a lot of information. Just in general, it tells me the operating system. So it's running Linux, but I think it's not sure if it's between Alma Linux or CentOS, but it's running pretty much Linux from what it can tell. And yeah, so that again, here it actually tells you vulnerabilities for this because it tells you like, so that's a good starting point. We didn't even run a vulnerability scan right here. We didn't do anything.
Can you tell if the
So
because that's in North Korea, right?
yeah, but so this is not necessarily a webcam, but for webcam specifically, you would look at either what are known ports for webcam related services, maybe known operating system. You can look at like I think there's some other keywords that you can look for to look at specific webcams. I haven't ventured too much with like the webcam aspect, but I know it's definitely something you can do, which is why I mentioned it because I know that's always a attention getter. So what? Explore? Or you're trying to see? Yeah, you're really curious about it, but you might be able to. I mean, like if we just put like, for example, webcam, like so find a web powered by Kevin. You know, I haven't messed too much with it, but see this server 50 webcam, and then if we click on it, some random guy. I don't believe like you still have to do like additional. It's not like you give the live feed from here right away, like but it still tells you, okay, now look at all these vulnerabilities, all that information. We may like this is intense. So if it is really a webcam that's publicly, available, you may be able to exploit something and get into it and then see the live feed from it. So it's kind of it, but in Shodan is really anything that is connected. If we're talking about IoT devices, your fridge, if it's public facing, it's on there. Like all of that stuff is on here, like as long as it's public facing. So it's just anything. So it's definitely it's a cool tool. Like, you can know a lot of information and it's free. I mean, there's a pricing model, but I don't really know what it does of like for additional stuff, I guess you can do like for $69 a month or whatever, but you don't really, the free version is definitely very good just to play around and have fun with. So, but last thing I will show, which is web-based for this, I believe. Let me grab my mouse. Yeah, because I covered all of that. So now this last thing is, for the most part, people refer it to as Google dorking. Dorking for the most part. So this can be done with any web browser. You don't have to do it really with Google specifically. I'm in Safari right now. But all it is, it's about using specific words. So for this one, I will put in title, and this just tells me, is this in the title of the web page? So now I can put then keywords. So for example, one thing that you want to look up is the index, the website index. So I'm looking at random, I'm not even picking a specific site right now. And I'll show you guys how to target a specific site. But this is telling me any web page that is publicly available, obviously on our web browser, that within the title has index of, which usually those are your index websites. Why index? Why does it matter? Is because index tells you all the different websites, all the different like pages within that website. So it helps you like understand some of that information. But if I want like just to, I'll play with some other words, just admin, for example. And title admin. So now I will find anything that's titled admin. So I may find like specific admin portals. A lot of it, obviously, right now, just based on the search that I'm doing, admin is just giving me really news articles. But if I go a little bit more specific, I can do login, and then now it's going to look at both. So now it's going to be looking at admin login. So now I have admin login. First thing, I found some random thing, like I found an admin login for a site. Now I click on it. So this is obviously not necessarily actual admin login. It could just be your login, but maybe it's not. And maybe when you click on it, you get redirected, but maybe what you're actually seeing is the actual admin login and you can exploit that. So now there's a bunch of stuff you can use, but then you can do and specify the site. So you can do site, and then you can put, I don't know, I'll use a basic site. This is again publicly available information, so there's nothing illegal. But right now I'm looking at Apple. Is there anything that says like admin login for Apple? Anything I can find around that? I mean, and you can look through it. So whatever your target is, you'll specify that domain, and then you'll specify what you're looking for. And you can look at a lot of things. I mean, pretty much there's a lot you can do, but this is called dorking for the most part. So a lot of different commands you can explore, and again, another way to gather information, things that are facing some, because if we go to apple.com right now, I'm not going to find some of that more targeted information. So this helps you speed up, go through all of these pages and all of that. Like here, I'm just finding, Walmart, Apple, some other Apple thing, but just like basic stuff that Apple wants you to find. But if you want to get a little bit creative, and Apple probably does a good job at hiding it, but I'm just using that as a random example. But yeah,
You said it's called dorking?
yeah, dorking, dorking. Yep, yep. So that's yeah, just if you just like this, dorking, but I guess probably if you specify Google, because I think it probably helps like you see what is Google dorking and then like all of that. So it's usually known as Google dorking, but again, it doesn't apply just to Google. So and you can probably find, I'm assuming, like a bunch of cheat sheets for that. Like if I just put that, so if you wanted to look it up and like something, I don't know, I'll pick on this one for example, but and now you have some like other stuff. So like site, then same thing, file type. If you want to look for PDFs, links, and URL. Yep.
You ever heard of the Google hacking database? It's pretty much like a website where it shows all the vulnerable sites you can use with like a template of the like dorks all put together.
Sure.
And you can like
Okay.
combine them together to like get really specified results.
So it was Google. I haven't heard about it, but Google.
Google hacking database.
Let's check it out in real time. Make sure that we're still plenty of time. Uh, is it the GitHub based one or?
There should be a website, it should be it's like a little
Sure.
V of the.
Let's see, it might be tied. Sometimes they put the GitHub and then with the site. Top Google Advanced Search.
Try looking up a GHDB.
Yeah, that's what it was like.
I think that's what the actual website is.
Yeah, GHDB, but unless it's in one of those, let me make sure before. Let's see. We should do
Yeah, try that
It's
first.
probably that one, yeah. Export database.
Yeah, so it shows like all of the
Yep.
vulnerable ones that have been documented, that have been used for like extracting this vulnerable information.
Very cool.
Like find like VPN portals or whatever.
I will be adding that to my reading list. No, that's yeah, I didn't know about that. That's very neat. Appreciate the share. Yeah, that's cool. I already see lists some things that's some of the work for you already ahead of time. So that's really cool. That's fun one. Appreciate the share. Okay, so that's that for passive. I will close that out. And the last thing we will do is Nikto. So let me find my mouse. Okay. So for Nikto, on this VM, I installed Apache in the background just so it show up a vulnerability. Or wait, sorry. Yep. Actually, I'm just gonna run it from the command line. Just yeah, I don't know why I searched Nikto. That's a command line only. But so we would do and actually let me make sure my IP didn't change. It shouldn't have, but I want to make sure. Yep, it's still this is my VM IP, so now you guys can all know it. No, it's not an issue. It's you won't be able to get to it. So, but so you put yeah. I, I like that. Yeah. So Mictel, and then you can look for you put HTTP, click and type, and then my IP, which is 172.16.47.129. And then I'll run that. And then now it ran a vulnerability scan on my VM. It's still running it right now, but it's looking at it just to see if there's any vulnerabilities. I literally just like installed Apache on it just so it show up something because if I run it for the most part, like nothing showed up. With this for the Nikto update. Yeah, this is if you want to submit it to their database. But so from here now, this is just to see if there's any vulnerabilities. So from here, if you look right here, so it tells me there's a CVE where it should be listed. Yeah. Yep. Let me make it might be a little bit bigger too for everybody. So yeah, it tells you like pretty much like some information, which is what you want to find is like, okay, this target, so that was my target. So you could do again with internal network IP, this subnet, and then look at all the targets and it'll list like, okay, so now I found that like there was Apache, and then that you can pretty much find that there's a CVE, which is this one. Then click on it. Should open. It doesn't. I'll just open link. And then from here, now I know, okay, I purposefully installed like some old Apache server. Like real dated just to make sure it would pull up something. But now it told me, okay, now I know this server can be exploited, the CV 2003. It was released in 2003 and then 1418. So it tells me like Apache HTTP server on OpenBSS allows remote attackers to obtain sensitive information via the ETAG header, which reveals the number. Obviously, you have to do like more digging into like what that means because it tells you just a description. But it pretty much gives you some information like of what that is, and that's the big item is like the CVE. If you can find what is known vulnerabilities, then that means it's been publicly. Obviously, if there's a CVE released, that means there's a potential patch that was released for it as well. So that means it's known. It was either published by someone, the organization published it, some researcher found it, mentioned it. Maybe it's not patched yet. So that's something too. It could be a CVE and it's, still a 0 day. It's just known, but the vendor hasn't been able to find a patch for it. So maybe you're still in that window where you could exploit it. But for the most part, a lot of organization, a lot of places do not patch everything. So there's always things that are vulnerable. If it tells you there's a CV, it's most likely still exploitable because they probably didn't patch it, but they might have put compensating controls. So they might have put some type of fix in there that still makes it non-exploitable. But it's definitely, again, information. So now between everything we did, we were able to gather a lot of information that was publicly available just on the internet, no issues running some scans, just to get some idea of the open ports, get some idea of the CVEs, maybe the vulnerabilities that are on there. So it really just, you're gathering all that information and now you haven't even started your attack. So you're getting this whole picture and now you're gonna be like, okay, let's see. These are the common heavy hitters. Because when you're like really attacking a platform, it's not like you're like, oh, this is vulnerable, I'm gonna attack all of it. You're attacking what is tried and true. You're attacking the same, usually the ports. If you see that port's open, oh yeah, that's definitely my target. If you see that there's that CV or this exploitable, that's what my target is. You're not going to be like, oh, there's this other CV that's kind of cool. I haven't attacked this. Let me try this. You may as well, but a lot of times like you're hitting those things that are tried and true that it's going to get you in. If you can't, because you always try to start with those, then you pivot to some of those other things. And then you see if you can get in from that. But a lot of times, like you'll know, and when you're doing this a lot, then you figure out like, yeah, this is something that usually gets me in. So let me try it again. Cause yeah, save your time. Cause the point is not to like how you get in, it's just to get in. That's kind of going away from recon a little bit, but their goal, once they're in, then they'll do their thing. And that's when they'll like, get crazier. But goal one is get in. Goal one is really gathering information to get in. But that's pretty much it for at least the demos part. And let me make sure there's no questions on Zoom. Okay, sorry, I didn't see the question earlier. Is it possible to see port 22 for SSH if it's open? Yeah, like so in Nmap, like the finding we had that was that showed it some. And so obviously, but you can with Shodan, you can see if the open port SSH22 is open. But here, if I go back to believe, or did I close it out? Yeah, so I can always rerun it, but Nmap SV doing the same thing. When we ran this had port, like the test environment had port 22 open. So Nmap told me that port 22 was open, but we could as well see that from Shodan. So you can see just a lot of information, but here again, so TCP 22 open. One thing too that I didn't bring up that just makes me think with Nmap, if you're seeing under the state filtered, this is a key indicator that the traffic is going through a firewall. So you have to be mindful of that because you're probably not going to be able to get through it. So it may be open, but you're going through some type of service. Web application firewall, should be a local firewall, but some type of firewall, you're probably, so if the state is filtered, yes, the port's open, but yes, you're going to have to go through a firewall, which makes it much more difficult to exploit. So just in general, something of notice, because you may see that and question like, what does filtered mean? So just if you're curious. But I will exit out of this. Try to sure. My VM always likes to never show me the top of, and then doesn't like me. We will just do that. Pull up the slides again and then can, okay. All the way up back top. So demos. So pretty much last slide, just summary of everything we talked about. So obviously the biggest thing, you can't defend what you don't know. So that's why I believe reconnaissance has a lot of value for blue teams, things that you might have not noticed before. So it really allows you to map that network, see everything. And so if you know it, at least you can protect it. If you don't know it, can't do anything about it. If you don't know it, somebody's going to take advantage of it. So that's even the worst, which goes back to the Capital One. They didn't know it was misconfigured, that AWS server. If they did, they probably would have patched it, or at least maybe they did, but I'm pretty sure based on what I had read that it just didn't know about it, especially since like such a critical server. But so definitely the first part is like that's why it's in my opinion is really valuable. So again, it helps you find what's visible. If you can make recon part of your routine, just anytime you're onboarding a new application, something new to your environment, if it's public facing, let's do some recon on it. Even if it's not public facing, let's do recon. But definitely, obviously, things that are public facing, I would start with because that's most likely what they're going to see first. And then you can do it on internally, but understand what could be exploitable from an attacker's perspective. That's going to be really help you prioritize, even if you're running a vulnerability management program. Like it helps you figure out like, okay, this is my vulnerability management like findings, all my database. Well, okay, I know this is there, but maybe let's focus on the ones that I know can be exploited that most likely attackers are going to see. So that's where it's like it's helpful to do reconnaissance and look at that perspective. And then obviously regularly scan, which ties into like, vulnerability management a little bit, but as well just scan, and that's what I mean, like Nmap scans, or it could be NICTO scans, vulnerability scans, all of that. But yeah. And then patch it where you find, obviously, if you don't patch it, it's not going to do you any good. Document all that inventory because you want to have that information, know like this is your threat landscape, these are all your assets. And then obviously the big thing is like if you can within your organization use red teaming, pen testing, or bug bounty. So that's kind of ties into, they're recreating the attackers, so they're going to do their recon. But if you can do it as well on your own, and then they do it because they may look at different things, that's really going to add a lot of value. Or bug bounties, you pay people to find bugs in your environment because they're going to look at things that are publicly accessible and they're going to try to exploit it. So they will do a lot of recon to try to figure out. So sometimes if you can point them in some direction too, which is what usually bug bounties kind of tell you like, hey, we want this tested, and if you find something, we'll pay you. But so if you can implement this in their organization, then it's very valuable. And red teaming and testing does not have to be your internal team. Like it could be, you hire someone, but you could do it internally. So like with the organization we do it like we pay people. So we just facilitate the organization of the pen test and all that, what we want tested and all, but they do the actual work. If we had all the budget we want, we'd have it all internally, but that's where the limitations are. And then obviously I think the big item is like if you can train your staff to figure out like what are the risks like for OSINT, like if app dev that's like spinning up a new application and they know like, oh, these are all information that's potentially publicly available that you can see, then they're more likely to hopefully like be aware of it, put some compensating controls and patch it. So that's where, yeah, but
So after you doing all your recon and you pinpointed IP address, do you also do a specific person like target a specific?
Yeah,
by individual.
yeah.
Basically, like fund name, all that.
So
info.
that is something because Recon's big, but that is something I didn't cover, and just for sake of time. But there is as well publicly available database of the entire email inventory of an organization. So there's Recon that's publicly available. Again, that's passive reconnaissance, not active, completely legal. It tells you every single username, every single email that's in that, and you can use that. But on top, again, like you got to find a way, and that's LinkedIn, social media. That's again passive reconnaissance. You're gonna try to find like when you're targeting a specific user, usually you're gathering that information, you're going on LinkedIn. You're like, okay, like first you know obviously the target, who your company you're trying to target. So XYZ, I'm trying to target. I'm gonna go on LinkedIn. I'm gonna see who works in what team. Who can I exploit? Usually you're gonna exploit an IT personnel that's not security. You're gonna exploit a person that isn't in IT because they probably don't have great knowledge. They might fail the phishing attempt. They're usually the ones that are guilty. IT is because you're trying to get into like an admin account. So that's why they're targets too. But you're figuring out like, oh, they work. Okay, so now because they might not publish it on LinkedIn, their email, you can go look on that database. Okay, can I find this person's name? See if that's like that format, and it helps you find the format of the emails because every company uses it might be first name dot last name, some might be first name last name, some might be first letter of first name and then last name and then at, for their email. So you got to figure that out as well. So that's where it's like social media. You're finding out from that just basic stuff and you're gathering and then your target. So like, okay, they work in marketing. So now you're going to do a phishing campaign and there's tools like, so this is going outside of recon, but this is preparing for attack. There's another tool that can help you completely create a phishing campaign for you, open source, free, that you can do. And you can start doing a targeted phish for that user, send it through them. Try to obviously do something that's, in my opinion, not malicious in nature because it's going to get so you want to do something control to something legit, whatever, sometimes they do it, hey, call number and then whatever, and